ChatGerry, Recovery Across 3 Mortalities, number 1539, VPT 092 February 17, 2026, Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation, Category, Longevity. Preface. This is not a theoretical medical paper. It is a 33-year record of survival inside one body. During these 3 decades I passed through 3 life-threatening crises that behaved like natural disasters. The first was a series of earthquakes, 5 heart attacks between 1994 and 2004. Second was a hurricane, a kidney failure in 2010. The third was a compound disaster with hemorrhagic stroke in 2025 caused by long-term vascular damage combined with a sudden blood pressure surge. Each event forced me to redesign how I lived. How I worked, how I slept, how I ate, how I walked, how I measured my body, and how I decided to use the years that remained. The most important lesson learned is simple and concrete. Recovery is not a return to the past. Recovery is the construction of a new stable way to live under new biological limits. From organ failure to structural failure, this paper is no longer the story of a single medical event. It is a repeated pattern study in the same biological system, using the same measurement framework and the same behavioral control method across 3 different organs and 3 different failure mechanisms. I do not classify disease by organ. I classify it by structure. The heart attacks were acute rupture under extreme load. The kidney failure was slow metabolic deterioration over many years. The stroke was accumulated damage plus a sudden trigger. Different organs were involved, but the underlying physics and the required adaptation strategy were the same. The first turning point, removing the external load. The third heart attack in 2001 became my first true wake-up call because it forced an immediate change in how I lived. At that time, my life was dominated by extreme workload and pressure, constant travel, chronic sleep deprivation, a $500 million lawsuit, and 3 arrests for actions that were later proven in court to be completely innocent. As the first Asian American CEO at that level, I carried an invisible pressure to prove myself every day. I never complained, but the physiological cost was my health and nearly my life. And the psychological damage required 3 years of professional therapy before I returned to a normal mental state. The most powerful medical intervention was not a drug. It was selling the company and removing the extreme external load. Only after that decision did my daily life begin to include regular sleep, simple meals, and consistent walking. At that stage my approach was still qualitative. I followed medical advice and too many medications, but I did not yet have a quantitative system to guide my survival. Repeated heart attacks had already produced permanent scar tissue and reduced pumping capacity. My previous lifestyle was no longer compatible with survival. The second turning point, living inside a data feedback loop. The kidney crisis in 2010 forced an internal transformation. When dialysis was suggested, I changed from a passive patient into an active researcher of my own body. Daily life was reorganized around measurement, analysis, and control. I measured glucose, body weight, blood pressure, food portion, sleep hour, stress level, and post-meal walking every day. I studied medical knowledge 13 to 14 hours every day and tested every idea on my own body. This created a true scientific feedback loop measure. Interpret, adjust, and verify. Over 7 to 8 years my weight decreased, glucose stabilized, lipids improved, and renal function stopped declining. Medically, chronic kidney disease means the progressive loss of nephrons, the tiny filtering units in the kidney. The remaining filters must work harder to compensate. And when that compensation fails, dialysis becomes necessary through disciplined lifestyle changes based on daily data. The slope of my disease trajectory turned in a favorable direction for the first time. The third turning point, precision control after the stroke. The stroke in mid-2025 was structurally different because it was the result of decades of vascular calcification damage combined with a sudden and high blood pressure trigger. After 8 days in the hospital with multiple seizures, I asked a practical operational question: how should I live each day to avoid the next catastrophic event while preserving the function of my remaining organs? Blood pressure control moved to the highest priority, with special attention to avoiding spikes rather than relying on average values. I began measuring my blood pressure 24 times per day and used pulse pressure (PP) as an indicator of arterial stiffness. Mean arterial pressure map as the mechanical load on vessel walls, and the ratio of P to average systolic pressure as a marker of rupture risk (SBP) spike. Walking remained essential for circulation and glucose control, but it was reduced to a safe level, 59% reduction from my pre-stroke level. Sleep became a protected medical variable. Extended to 8 hours plus a daytime nap. Food selection was based on vascular safety and metabolic stability. Cognitive recovery and neuroplastic rewarding. Cognitive training became part of daily medical treatment through continuous reading, analysis, thinking, and writing. My memory for names and recent events slowed, but my research capacity increased. Within 3 months I recovered about 40% of the lost memory function and returned to independent living and full intellectual work. My cognitive capability rose to approximately 2 to 3 times higher than my pre-stroke level. And I reactivated topology and stochastic methods, learned 5 to 6 decades ago, as my daily medical research tools. This experience showed me that memory storage and analytical power cognition are not the same neural system, although part of my recall function was damaged. High-level logical processing strengthened through neuroplasticity and became the scaffolding for recovery. Longevity as stable daily function. Since 2010, my life has followed one continuous control structure: measure, interpret, adjust, and verify. Every meal, every walk, every hour of sleep, and every blood pressure reading belongs to this loop. This is not a theory. It is the operational architecture of my daily survival. Irreversibility is the biological foundation of longevity. Dead heart muscle becomes scar and no longer pumps. Lost neurons don't fully return. Hardened blood vessels do not become young again. Once this was fully accepted, my goal changed. I no longer tried to restore my youth. I focused on maintaining a stable and functional system aligned with my biological age. For me, longevity is defined operationally as the ability to walk safely, think clearly enough to study and conduct research, live independently, and continue to produce useful research knowledge for other patients. It is not resemblance to the past. It is stability in the present. Conclusion: what this 33-year record demonstrates is simple and measurable: 9 major incidents, 3 failure mechanisms, and 1 continuous adaptation model. Longevity is not a return to the old system. It is the stable and purposeful operation of a permanently changed one. Disclaimer: I write this paper not for fame, but to share what I have learned so others can understand their health, prevent disease, and live longer, healthier lives. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to T. He author, Gerald C. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C.